Let's get rolling on a Monday. Glasses in session. We go to the Glasser guest line. Check in with Travis Hines, who joins us. Give Travis a follow on X at Travis Hines 21. Iowa State sports columnist for the Des Moines Register. Kind enough to join us here on Send It In. Travis, we have games this week, my friend. Week 0 out in Dublin, Iowa State and Kansas State. Can you just kind of tell us about what maybe Matt Campbell told you guys about what the week is going to look like for Iowa State? When did they arrive in Dublin? Are the players going to get time to explore the city? What's the practice schedule going to look like? Just kind of, if you could, lay out the week leading up to the game on Saturday for Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State's goal with this trip is to try to keep it as standard as possible. So there's not going to be, at least for the team, a lot of pomp and circumstance. They leave Wednesday night, and then with the time change, arrive Thursday morning. They have a walkthrough at Aviva Stadium in Dublin Thursday night. And really, that'll be the extent of what the public sees from them. I believe they do have some practice facilities that are available to them on Friday. And then out in Dublin, the game's at 11 a.m. So they'll be at the stadium, 8:30, 9 a.m., ready to rock and roll. It's a very much a business trip, which, if you know Matt Campbell very well, you know that the distractions or getting out of routine is not something that he wants to entertain with his football team, and certainly not a game of this magnitude with the eyeballs that are be on it, and more importantly, the fact that it's a Big 12 game against a rival to open the season.
That's what makes it so unique, right, Travis? Like, we have seen this overseas the last couple of years. Florida State, Georgia Tech. We had Nebraska, Northwestern. We have a lot of great matchups in week 1, but just about all of them are out of conference, right? So what makes it unique about that Big 12 game to kick off the season? Iowa State's really not used to that. So what's the kind of added challenge that provides with two teams that know each other so well to kick off the season?
Yeah, there's just so many layers to it, because if it was just any Big 12 conference game, it's a huge game, right? There's only 9 of them. And as we know, as we saw in this new Big 12 last year, it's going to be chaotic and jumbled there at the top and probably throughout the middle as well, with so many teams kind of in the same range. But then you add in the fact that I think Kansas State, pretty easily is their biggest rival in the Big 12 now, with proximity and similarity between the two schools. This is very much a rival game for Iowa State. And then they're both in the top 25. Like, this game also has national implications. It's going to really set the tone. Like, the big part of the problem for the Big 12 in this current era of realignment is that its reputation has been dinged significantly since Oklahoma and Texas left. And that was a big reason why we were in November last year talking about, will the Big 12 champion get left out of the CFP? And I think with this game being a top 25 game, with it being on national television, with it literally being the first game of the season, it has a chance to really set the narrative for the entire league. If both of these teams go out and play well, I think that, the rising tide lifts all boats there for the league in terms of its national reputation. When you're talking about a 12-team playoff selected by a committee is really important. So I do think, like, the stakes of this game are shockingly high for a week 0 game in Europe. So it is a massive game for both teams that really, like, if you win this game, you're going to feel like you kind of got a lap ahead on the rest of the Big 12, because not only are you 1-0, but you've got a win against your rival and a team either team who wins that is going to be vying for the spot in Arlington in the Big 12 title game come December.
Yeah, very true. For the game itself, Travis, I mean, these games, as you know, normally come down to the wire, 3-point, 4-point games. The spread is Kansas State -3. Two good defensive head coaches with Kleiman and Campbell, but both teams have their quarterbacks returning. So do you see more of a higher scoring game? You think this is a game played in the 20s that comes down to a field goal? How do you kind of see it playing out?
I think a higher scoring game probably works in Kansas State's favor, because if it's high scoring, shoot 'em up, I think that means that Avery Johnson's probably having a big day. And that's good for Kansas State and bad for Iowa State. And Iowa State obviously has their own weapon at quarterback in Rocco Becht, but are we going to see a dynamic electric offense in week 0 from a team that's replacing 2 NFL wide receivers, that has a offensive line with, I believe, 3 new starters, most likely a new starting center? It would be a little surprising to see Iowa State come out and be able to put 35, 42 points on the board. I think if it is in the 20s, that helps Iowa State. They do have a seasoned kicker in Kyle Conradi, who hit a game winner with, I think, 6 seconds left at Iowa, an even bigger rivalry game as a freshman last year. So I think low scoring, if this comes down to kicks, is something that Iowa State feels pretty comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, how about that first 2 weeks, right? You get Farmageddon and then Iowa too to kick off the season. Pretty good. You mentioned Iowa State loses the two wide receivers, Higgins and Noel. Beck is back at quarterback. They return their top two running backs as well. So they're solid at QB and running back, but wide receiver is going to be the big question mark. Travis, give us a name or two of a guy that you think needs to emerge, could step up this season for the Cyclones on the outside.
Yeah, Xavier Townsend and Chase Sowell are the two transfers that they brought in, basically to be Higgins and Knoll. Not probably at that level, but when you look at what Iowa State has done at wide receiver, really since Matt Campbell has been there, they've recruited it and evaluated it extremely well. Xavier Hutchinson, another Texans wide receiver, they took out of junior college, despite him never playing in junior college. They took him out of spring practice there at his Texas junior college. And on down the line, Jaden Higgins, they took out of Eastern Kentucky, basically for free in the NIL era. Like, their evaluation and development of wide receivers has been really good. And I think that's probably why they're feeling solid about where they are, despite having to replace those two guys, because they have a system and they have an evaluation program in place that they feel like you're not going to get Higgins and Knoll in terms of their NFL level production immediately, but they do feel pretty good that they were able to plug those holes with two guys that are going to be productive for them.
We're talking Iowa State with Travis Hines here on Send It In. Other side of the ball, Travis, we know Matt Campbell's teams always have good defenses. Do you expect this defense to be another solid unit this year?
Yeah, the floor for Iowa State defensively is always really high. John Haycock, their defensive coordinator, I think is one of the best in the business, and they really have never had a bad defense, really since they've taken over here now in 10 years. Last year was probably as shaky as it's gotten, but they were absolutely decimated at the linebacker position. They were playing guys that probably in spring would have been their 11th, 12th, or 13th best linebacker because of the injuries. The good news for this year for them now is now they have a ton of depth, presuming that all those guys are able to stay healthy. They do have to replace a couple of safeties, but they've had a lot of experience and playing time from the reserves there. The biggest question is going to be at defensive end, because last year Iowa State was last in the Big 12 with just 7 sacks in 9 league games. Dominique Orange is a load for offensive lines to have to deal with on the inside at nose guard, but it doesn't do much good if he's double teamed and they're not able to win on those one-on-ones on the outside. And last year they were not able to. And if that doesn't change this year, it's going to put a lot of pressure on a secondary that I think will be good, but might take a little while to gel because there's so many new faces back there. So that's the biggest question. Can they pressure the quarterback? And then, how deep do they go at linebacker? Are they going hockey style lines where you're playing 6, 9 players there, or are they a little more selective with mixing and matching, based on scenarios and situations?
I mean, looking at the schedule, Travis, it really sets up pretty well for Iowa State, right? They don't have to play Texas Tech, Utah, and Baylor, 3 teams that are amongst the favorites right now preseason to win the Big 12. The K-State game is obviously neutral site. Iowa is going to be in Ames this year. So just about all their toughest games, they either don't have to play or they're going to be at home or on a neutral site. The win total is at 7.5 right now. Vegas sees Iowa State about an 8-win team coming off their first 11-win season last year. What's your prediction for Iowa State this season? How many wins do you think they get?
I've picked them at 8 wins overall, 6-3 in the league. And I think, again, like whether they're higher or lower than that is probably going to come down to what's their record in one possession games. It's really been the determining factor for Matt Campbell at Iowa State. When they've been good in close games, those are when they have those historic seasons like 2020 or last year when they won 11 games. When those games go the other way, it's more like 2022 where they were 4-8. And I think like the pieces are there for them to be good late in games and in close games. Rocco Becht was outstanding in the clutch last year. And really, when people talk about him and try to compare him to Brock Purdy, it's always that they're so good in the biggest moments and in the biggest situations, and that has propelled Iowa State. To me, what's going to be crucial for them is this first 4-game stretch, because they're coming back. They get an FCS team after Kansas State and South Dakota. That's a top 5 FCS team when you're coming off of now a 6-hour time change and about 8,000 miles of travel in 5 days. Then you get the Iowa game the following week, and then a road trip to Jonesboro, Arkansas to take on Arkansas State. So none of those are daunting games in and of themselves, but when you put all those together in the first 4 games of the season with the travel, I do think that is a little trickier than it looks on paper. And I think that'll really set the course of, are they a 9 or 10 win team, or are they really struggling to get to that 7-8 wins come November?
Travis, about 25 seconds left before we let you go. Big 12 this year is as wide open as I've ever seen a league with how jumbled it is with the odds towards the top. Which team in the Big 12 do you think worries you the most if you're an Iowa State fan? On paper, who would be the team that you think could be the best this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be Arizona State, specifically for Iowa State because of what happened in the Big 12 title game last year. That, Arizona State was kind of pulling away in that first half, and then Iowa State had maybe the worst quarter of football I've ever seen in the third quarter of that Big 12 title game that completely blew things open. Arizona State's got to come to Ames in November in what could be a huge, season-determining game on November 1st. So I think that's the game and the team that Iowa State fans have circled for a lot of different reasons. And I think Arizona State's going to be pretty dang good.
Yeah, love it. Great stuff. Travis Hines, give him a follow on X at Travis Hines 21, Iowa State sports columnist for the Des Moines Register. Kind enough to join us here. Travis, enjoy the game, man. Awesome to have college football back. Have a great season. Hope to catch up with you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.